Conflict in Ukraine, Lessons Learned from Vietnam, a conversation with Chuck Searcy, part of the series Global Trends in Conflict Resolution with Thomas G. Giglione. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by instantmediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hi, everyone. This is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
Thomas Giglione from Toronto, Canada, here in Vietnam. I'm an arbitrator and cross-border mediator.
Yes, and good to have you back, Thomas. And we are going to introduce our guest for today, and that's Mr. Chuck Searcy, and from the website landmines.org.vn. But Chuck, you're not a stranger to this podcast. You've been here with us before. Last time talking about your work, and of course, I'm going to share my screen so people can be refreshed and have their minds reminded of what you do. But just wanted to introduce Chuck again, and he's here today to talk with us about his thoughts on the topic for today, which is the conflict in Ukraine and the lessons that he and Thomas can share with us that Vietnamese people have learned because they too have gone through battles, war scars, strife, and we have a world on fire right now, especially in Eastern Europe, between Russians and Ukrainians, and so thought it would be a appropriate, good idea to bring in the experience from these two gentlemen. So I guess I will let you introduce yourself again, Chuck, because it's been a while since you were on.
Okay, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was here during the war, and when I came back to visit Vietnam in 1992 as a tourist, I was so impressed with the fact that the Vietnamese bore no animosity toward us as veterans and my friend and I. Yet the country was still recovering from the war, extensive damage, and of course, up to 3 million people who were killed. Sorrowful memories. And I realized at the time I wanted to come back and find a way to assist the Vietnamese in their own recovery. And so that happened in 1995. And I've been here ever since, working mainly on the legacies of the war, which in the case of Vietnam, the most extensive damage was caused by explosive ordnance, bombs and mines that did not detonate on impact, and Agent Orange, which is another detailed and long discussion. But the consequences have been terrible for Vietnam. And after so many years of effort, I think we're now making some progress. So there are, yes, lessons that can be learned from the Vietnamese and how to recover from the terrible damage, destruction, and personal loss of war, such as the people in Ukraine are going through now. And the Vietnamese and the few foreigners who have been here assisting them would be happy to share those experiences and see if it can help to alleviate some of the pain and suffering in Ukraine.
And this is what I wanted to bring up as someone who is here in Poland, in Warsaw, also taking up so many Ukrainians, refugees coming over here, women with children, some of them already after the very hard experience on them, seeing the atrocities of war after a very long journey. People come, they are very stressed, they are uncertain about their future. There is a huge movement of Poles who voluntarily help, give their hearts, their homes, their resources, so that people fleeing the war can feel welcome here, in this very surroundings, in this very environment that they are finding themselves in. And please remember, it is not that easy for them. We don't speak the same language. They are coming in the overcrowded means of public transport, usually trains. There are also volunteers who come on the borders and bring them to here. But everybody who comes has this sort of question in their mind: what happens next? How are we going to act? What's going to expect me in the nearest future, in the longer future, especially mother with children? And also, please know, we are here in Poland and there isn't war here. But every single conversation we have between ourselves, me speaking with my clients, I can also hear people on the street. Everybody is talking about the war. Everybody is talking about the situation. And under those severe circumstances, we are here today to talk what can happen next and what sort of other countries' experiences in here, Vietnam, can be used to help Ukraine.
Yes, and let me bring in Thomas. Thomas, before we go back to Chuck and how the Ukrainian situation connects with the Vietnamese situation, can you talk a little bit about what you discovered with regards to munitions that are being used in by the Russians against the Ukrainians, and just munitions generally, so that people who are not familiar can kind of have an idea of what we're talking about?
Okay, great. Thank you, Mac. Well, I like Chuck. We are both live in Hanoi, Vietnam, and now Chuck mentioned that it's coming up the 50th anniversary of the bombing of Hanoi. I'm right now on holidays, not very far from the demilitarized zone of the North and South conflict that happened 50 years ago in Nha Trang. But I'm here at a resort. It's a beautiful resort. But 50 years ago, there was very similar things happening right here where I am at this hotel. And 1 hour flight from here is a country called Laos, which is, as Chuck knows, the most bombed country in the history of humanity. Had suffered bombing that is just unimaginable bombing that happened 50 years ago. So from the perspective, I think we should look at, um, it's going to take a while for everything to be resolved. But now the technology exists where um, munitions like cluster bombs can be pinpointed and geolocated. And so we could put these atrocities to account. There are people that, Ukrainians are saying this and the Russians are saying this. What we can say for sure is atrocities have been committed. And now what we can do collectively is we could start gathering evidence. So to put this into account. So there is technology, I could talk about that a little bit later, where we can use to gather evidence. So not only for evidence for The Hague, but also to collect evidence to find these cluster munitions.
Thomas,
Yes, go ahead.
could I interject real quick? I'm going
Sure,
to share my screen. Thomas,
sure.
you had shared with us an article from Bellingcat.com
Mhm,
that's published February 27th, 2022, that deals with cluster munitions being
mhm,
used in civilian areas. And I read it this morning,
mhm,
and it was discussing how cluster bombs are being found in
mhm,
this specific areas in Ukraine
mhm,
and Kharkiv, and the dangers and the fear that the society and the civilians are facing with the threat
mhm,
of these things being unleashed.
mhm,
Um, can you describe again what are cluster bombs for the layman?
mhm. Well, cluster bombs. Maybe Chuck. Maybe you have more experience about cluster bombs, describing them. But they are basically munitions that are. It's one bomb, but it could be hundreds or thousands are dispersed. Smaller bombs are dispersed through a greater area to cover a greater area. And a lot of the bombs are not do not explode, and they're left. And a lot of them, they people pick up, especially children, and could be maimed, or it could be fatal. You could pick them up a year later, and they could cause injury or fatalities. So that's the best way I could describe it. They become more and more complex, over the years. But that's my understanding of them, and they're war crime to use them for against civilians.
Yeah, there's actually about 30 different types, but they're all similar in design. They're an orb about the size of a tennis ball, a baseball, or an orange. And inside, as Thomas said, there could be hundreds. There could be up to about 600 tiny shards, pellets, pieces of shrapnel that, when they explode, when the small canister explodes, these hundreds of pieces of shrapnel burst out in every direction at high velocity. And they rip apart anything that's nearby. They're designed to maim human beings. They're not designed to kill human beings. They do kill people, especially children, but they're designed to create a lifetime disability. So it's a horrendous weapon, which is why 123 countries have signed the Cluster Munitions Treaty, which bans the production, the storage, the transport, the import of cluster bombs. And as Mac mentioned at the beginning, I believe Russia has not signed that treaty, nor has Ukraine, nor has the US, nor has China, and Vietnam has not signed it either. Frankly, I think Vietnam has a slightly better rationale for explaining why they haven't signed it, but there's no good rationale, frankly. Every country should sign it, and no country should ever use those horrendous weapons again. Frankly, I was stunned when I heard that cluster bombs were being used in Ukraine. I shouldn't have been, because the military has never seen a weapon that they didn't like, and the military is very resistant to ending the use of any weapon. However, with more than 100 countries agreeing that they will never use this weapon again, to me, it's a shock that it still is being deployed in Ukraine. Although I hasten to add, at the moment we are focused on Ukraine, and rightly so. There's very good reasons for all of this attention and for efforts to end that situation there. But I remind everyone what you know already, and that is that there are terrible situations also in other places in the world today. And I won't even start the list, but where cluster bombs are being used on a daily basis. The cleanup issue is a post-war challenge in every country where this weapon has been used. Vietnam is still struggling with the impact of more than 5 million tons of bombs dropped on this country, more bombs than were used in all of World War II in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, in Europe. But we have made great progress in reducing the number of accidents, the injuries, and the deaths from all bombs, including cluster munitions. And there are some lessons learned in Vietnam that I think as soon as this awful bombing and shelling stops in Ukraine, which I hope will be immediate, Vietnam is in a position to step in and help deal with the recovery and the rebuilding.
So, to interrupt you, Chuck, I understand that you personally, but Vietnam in general, they do have a vast experience in educating and bringing awareness, because part of that is also about educating civilians, which after the wars are no longer civilians, they are just ordinary people who can suffer from that the most. And this is where this education needs to take place somehow. Can you tell us how this educational process was being led in Vietnam? to bring help to Ukraine later on, and what stages, what materials it embraced, and what spectacular achievements were actually reached, because you are aware how it went in Vietnam.
Well, for us in Vietnam, risk education, awareness building, teaching the kids, the adults, the farmers, the villagers, everyone about the nature of the danger and the threat, and helping them to learn how to identify every piece of ordnance. All of that is critical to saving lives, reducing accidents and injuries. In fact, the risk education program is really essential to the success of the demining program, because the children in a village, the families in a community have actually become the eyes and ears of our detection effort. So the children are taught what each item is, what it will do to them if they are careless with it, negligent, and what action to take when they find a cluster bomb on the side of the road or in a ditch, or another mortar round or another item in their schoolyard. They notify the authorities, they notify one of our teams, and within an hour, within 2 hours, the trained professional team is there to deactivate this item of ordnance, to make it safe, or to destroy it in place, which is often the course that has to be taken. And the result is the number of accidents, injuries, and deaths has gone down year after year, while the number of munitions found and destroyed has actually gone up. But those are the right lines on the graph, because it means that more and more people are finding these items, turning in the information, and more of it is being destroyed. What we realize is that will have to go on for many years to come. There's no overnight solution. There's no end date when we could say the problem is solved. The best we can do is reach a point that we're close to now, where we can say the problem is managed. People know what to do, they understand the consequences, and they have confidence they can live safely. Those are lessons that Vietnam can teach to people of Ukraine, let's say, once this awful conflict ends and people try to rebuild their lives and go back to normal. The Vietnamese have had vast experience in that, and they can come to a place like Ukraine with that experience, but with also a great capacity for humanitarian compassion and understanding, because of what they have been through in their own decades of war.
Yeah, Thomas, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I just want to say that, we are living in a digital world, and when they were dropping bombs here in Vietnam, where Chuck and I live in Hanoi, it wasn't a digital world. So now we're seeing everything live stream, the atrocities happening in live stream, and that is a terrible thing. But the good thing about that is now we could document them. It's a digital world, so like even your Microsoft Word document has metadata, and we could see who touched it, who controlled it, and such, and that is used in evidence in the court of law. Videos and photos also contain metadata, especially if they're cross-referenced with geolocation with Google Maps. There are a group of online sleuths, open source sleuths. Bellingcat is one of them out of several that train people on how to make a difference in helping to document and geolocate where these cluster bombs are landing in the Ukraine, not only for later on for the cleanup, but also for documenting the atrocities that are happening. And trust me, all of this has been documented. It will be brought to The Hague, and there will be people that be brought to account. We can't see that happening now, but it will happen within a year. So all these atrocities could be held into account. So I suggest, if a lot of us are online, There are ways that we could make a difference. And if you're a lawyer, I believe the New York Bar Association is one out of several that
Yeah,
have
let me
submitted evidence, yeah,
yeah,
to the
Thomas, let me
Hague.
share my
Sure.
screen. Let me share my screen. You did send me a
Yeah.
caption
Hmm.
of one article that confirms that the New York City Bar Association urges a prompt investigation of potential Russian war crimes in Ukraine. Can you speak a little bit about this?
Yeah, why I shared this with Mac was because here's New York City, yeah, which is a world away from um, the Ukraine. And the lawyers in New York got together and saying we're gonna make a difference. We're going to be helping in documenting and the evidence that will come forth, so people are being held to account. So bar associations all over the world could help in that regard. I know Natalia is working with a immigration right now with a crisis and that's happening right now, where the people from Ukraine are flooding into the surrounding countries, and they need legal service right now with respect to their status and such. But you could see that lawyers are also looking long term on taking people to account. And trust me, people are going to be taken into account. We could see this. This was done in Serbia, where sanctions were not lifted until people were taken into account and for the war crimes they committed. So a lot of people are disillusioned about what they can do, but there's a lot that you can do with open online sourcing and using the latest technology to document for evidence, and also document so we can retrieve and do the kind of good work that Chuck Searcy is doing. Chuck Searcy didn't have geolocation at the time to look for cluster bombs. Well, he does now, but I'm sure he's using it. But you can actually see a video, and you could actually designate exactly within a few square meters where the bomb would land. So there's technology here that is open source, and I encourage people and lawyers to get involved, and because it's very disillusioning to watch this happen in real time and not and be feel helpless. We are not helpless, and we can do something collectively. That's
Yeah.
all I wanted to say.
Yeah, Chuck, before I continue, did you want to add to that? What Thomas was mentioning?
No, I'm very interested in any technology that will save time and increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the effort. Yes. I have to say that over the years, we really have found through experience on the ground in Quanti province, which is the most heavily bombed area in the history of the world, that the technology is a huge asset, yes, in so many ways. But we still depend on the eyes and ears of the kids and their parents and the villagers and the farmers, local people to be alert and to notice an item of ordnance when they find it, to pay attention after heavy rains or floods or changes in weather, when a lot of these items will wash up and they'll appear in places they weren't a week before. And the people are reliable. It's a community effort. They really understand the challenge and they understand their role in it. And together we really are on the way to making Vietnam safe and providing, I hope, an example that can be used in other places, such as Ukraine.
Thank you. So, some thoughts. The name of the channel is Lawyers and Mediators International. Sometimes I wish it was Peacemakers International, but that's already taken. But the point is that the reason we come here and we discuss these topics, and the reason that the other day I emailed Chuck and Thomas to join Natalia and I, to talk about this, is because we want to make a difference. We want to feel empowered because I think universally around the world, that's a feeling a lot of people have. Like they want to do more, but you feel restrained because I'm 6,000 miles away, from where the carnage is happening. And I was telling Natalia, that I wish I could do more. And so she, more ways than any of us on this stage today, is doing, things very actively right this moment and helping individual families. And Chuck, you've had decades of, helping heal, real people who have suffered. And so when we put on this episode and others like it, it's because we are encouraging folks to do something. If you're an attorney, just like Thomas mentioned the other day, I mean, the other minute, try to get involved with bar associations that are going to try to put evidence together to do something about this post-war. Okay, if you are an individual, all right, or a small business, look at the podcast recording that Natalia and I just did just 2 days ago, where she was sharing a whole bunch of websites and links on where people can make donations and try to help end the suffering. And so I just wanted to say that's why we do this. It's not just to give informational, educational advice to people who might be interested in mediation and conflict resolution, but it's also to try to make a difference because we all know we would love to do more, but unfortunately we can't. And that's the one thing that we all agree on. We all agree on many, many things, but one of the things we agree on is peacemaking. And the people of Ukraine, deserve this because they did nothing to warrant this act of aggression. Natalia, please.
Yes, I wanted to say that Poland also reported the war crimes on civilians to the International War Tribunal in The Hague. And these proceedings have been started, so we are not saving that for some other unknown time. This investigation is already in progress. And this is important that everybody is aware of that and that there is already this institution that will be handling that and it will be handling that also on spot. But from the conversation and the guests we are having today, I'm learning something really, really important. Conflicts like this happened already somewhere in the world. They are happening now. Ukraine is unfortunately the living example of it. But that also means that one day these people whom I see every day and whom express great love and devotion to their country will want to come back. Today I had a conversation with someone who is staying in my home and they said, "But we want to come back. How can we do that if there is no roads, if there is no place to live, when places are bombed to the ground and you have nowhere to go? But we want to go there. How much time it will take to clear it out for us?" And people have these questions and awareness already in them, but it will take education, it will take materials. And I believe that is already a good moment to start educating even little children here in Poland who came from Ukraine so that when they even go and visit, when they are going to come back, so that even if they are very little, they need to learn all these signs of danger to them, to their families, to their pets that can stem from all these remainings of war. And education on that needs to stop immediately, needs to start immediately, needs to start now.
And Thomas, I'm gonna share my screen to share some images of cluster bombs, and I'll get
Yes.
your take on it. I got 2 pages up. One, of course, is Wikipedia that talks
Mhm.
about cluster munition,
Mhm.
but the other one is a graphic that I found on voanews.com that talks about quote unquote how they work. But go ahead. Which one would you like me to share? And
The one I sent you on WhatsApp. The one I
oh,
wanted you to share, yeah.
yes,
I
the
shared on
one,
WhatsApp. Yeah.
this one right here.
Is yeah because I think it's important that Natalia was talking when they come back. What's going to happen? There are cluster bombs, munitions that look like toys. They look like little toys. I sent to you on
Oh,
WhatsApp.
yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
I'll put that
Um,
in a second.
yeah, yeah. They look like toys, and the work that Chuck is doing with awareness and in Vietnam could also be applied. with training, with the coordination with the United States Peace Institute. So when people come back to the Ukraine, and they are going to come back and rebuild, that they need to become aware, children especially, of what these ordinances look like, because they look like toys. I don't know if they were designed to look like toys, but it's very sad that these cluster bombs look like little toy airplanes, and it's something that a
There
2-year-old
you
or a
go.
4-year-old will pick up. Chuck, can you make a comment about
Yeah, they were. Of course, they were designed like toys. They were designed to be tempting to kids, and it's one of the diabolical aspects of war. It's one of these things that's just maddening, to decade after decade, we still witness this happening in some country of the world. But yeah, the whole arms business of selling and designing and making and selling weapons, in my opinion, is evil. But we don't stop it. We have some restrictions on nuclear weapons, and now we have the cluster munitions treaty, but they're not adequate. So yeah, we have to, as Max said, we all have to be in the business of peace. I mean, it has to be a challenge that we feel every single day of our lives, because the forces of war and the forces of evil are out there, and there are more of them than there are of us, I'm afraid. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think there are really more of the peacemakers in the world, if we just have to find a way to raise our voices and to take the actions necessary.
Mac,
Yes.
Natalia, Chuck, I want to acknowledge you for the work that you did and inviting Chuck and I to talk about this today. And let us know how else we can contribute. We're ready, able, and willing to help in any way.
Thank you so much. And I'll give Natalia the last word on to close us out. But just wanted to say, the whole thing has been heavy on all our hearts. And Natalia was just here in the US a number of days ago, and she was watching, from our screens here, Russian tanks rolling into a neighboring country. And that's some scary sights. And I liken it to the equivalent of Texans, viewing soldiers from Louisiana crossing our border. I mean, it's that small. And it's shocking to me because in the US, the states were all tight knit and everything is local, right? I'm just about an hour and 20 minutes from the Louisiana border. But over there, I say that with respect, of course, in Ukraine, I mean, I'm looking at a map. It's literally Kiev is literally what, maybe an hour from the uh, Polish border. I'm guessing by car. And I'm looking at a map, and I'm looking at Moscow, just how close it is to Ukraine. How can such lethal weapons be used in such close proximity between two neighboring countries? It doesn't make any sense to me. You don't see that in the Western world anyway. You don't see that. Okay, it's quite shocking whenever I'm looking at the news. It's still unbelievable. But anyway, Natalia, if you'd like to close us out and give us any
And I
final
think
thoughts.
that even more shocking it is when you think that they speak the same language. The Ukrainian people who come here, they do speak Ukrainian, of course, but they even in between themselves, they speak Russian, they sing Russian. And this is also the language in which I am communicating with Ukrainians, because unfortunately I do not know Ukrainian, but I do know Russian. And look, this war is happening between people who are communicating in the very same language, who are perfectly able on the language level to communicate with between themselves, but on any other level they're unable to communicate. Again, we as mediators, what we are wanting and to bring into the world is also to enhance communication. What people are needing who come here, and this is again the work for lawyers. I know that there are very many volunteers that I would want to acknowledge here in Warsaw, but also in Krakow. Everywhere there are volunteer advocates who answer the phones, give free legal advice on immigration, on employment issues, on any other kind of issues that are connected with getting necessary help for families. So, legal wise, these people can get free help elsewhere. I also wanted to acknowledge Poland as a state for doing a lot for Ukrainian people who come here. It's very easy for them. They just cross the border and upon their passport, can be internal passport, not just the external passport they have. They will have easiness with just using free public transport. They can go anywhere in Poland for free. They will be able to work without the work permits. Healthcare is free for them, as well as it is the education for their children, whether it is a preschool or the school. There are already actions to make Ukrainian people learn Polish language, to make them feel friendly here. And I'm just stunned with how much it is being done. But on the other hand, I also see these people. The family that I'm hosting, the little child that came with the mother, didn't speak for a day at all. And please remember, this is not just the war. These are people who are affected by that, and amongst them, a lot of children. And once again, let me remind you, there is already more than 1,330,000 refugees from Ukraine that already crossed the Polish border, and half of them are children.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Natalia. We'll be back
Thank
So
you.
with
much.
another topic and similarly situated. So see y'all soon. Bye
Bye
bye.
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 Thank you.